Hello, welcome everybody to Patch Management Session 3. We've talked about the navigation of patch management. We talked about the policies and all the stuff involved in making stuff happen. Now we're looking more in depth into configuration. Like we've talked to you guys the previous two sessions, I'm Scott.
My name is Chris.
And we're going to get right into it, just like all the previous sessions.
We did launch our new blueprint and gave you the link to that. So if you didn't get a chance to save that, we'll provide the link again during our live session. If you want to kind of see what that looks like, here is the link if you want to remember that and copy that down. But this is going to give you all the information for the new patch manager. It's going to take you to all of our documentation. It's going to take you to any how-to videos. All of these are clickable. They're going to have links to additional resources to dive in to the patch manager. This is the whole kit and caboodle patch manager broken down into the 5 screens, and then those broken down to all the individual sections. So everything is right here at your disposal. Again, we launched that for part 2, still out there. We'll keep stressing that a little bit more as we go through the live training and demo that again, but just want to bring that out and make sure you know of all the tools you have at your disposal. As for today, we're going to talk a little bit about patching groups and kind of go over a little bit of the recommended practice for setting up your groups in kind of a logical order, and then kind of talk about the difference between creating new groups and importing and kind of walking you through that process. One thing we've harped on from the get-go was once I'm in the patch manager, I can stay in the patch manager and I can create groups, I can tie them to auto joins, and just want to kind of reinforce that information. We're going to also talk a little bit more in depth about stage deployment and the different stages that we have, test, pilot, production, and how to set that up and how to tie that way back to the dashboard to that view and kind of see the overall statuses of my different stages as they're going through and as my patches are progressing through those stages. Next, we're going to do a little deeper dive into our devices screen, and we're going to talk about patch information. So we kind of stopped with our devices and we told you that, hey, here's a list of all my devices. If I click on one, it's going to give me a lot of information down in that bottom half of the screen. We're going to break down the different sections within that screen and kind of just dive a little deeper into what we have there. And lastly, we're going to finish up today with kind of a real-world scenario of patches. Let's say I have a patch that I need to automatically deploy to all my agents. How do I search? How do I deploy right from this screen? So we're kind of doubling back, kind of picking up where we left off and kind of advancing some of our skill sets and just kind of seeing what we can do within the patch manager is going to alleviate our day-to-day activities and kind of set us up for success in the future. All right, so here we are. We're back in the configuration screen. And when I jump in here, it's going to automatically default to my group section. Now here you can see, here's all the groups that I have in my system, my Microsoft update policy, third-party update policy, reboot policy, and approved policies. Now, everything but this third-party update policy is going to be ingrained with the patch manager. Third-party is that additional license. That is something that it's kind of inserted in here, but you still have to have a license for it. You have to get with your account manager and kind of set that up. And then you'll make these items clickable once we have all of that back-end released for you. One thing I just want to focus on is just kind of how I set up my groups. You can see that I have what I kind of break down to my approval and deny groups versus my patch install groups. I keep all of my approval groups, all the ones that I assign approval policies, up at the top so I can kind of lump them together in kind of a logical view. You can see for these groups, I don't have any update policies or reboot policies assigned. The only thing I do with these top groups is apply my approval policies. You can see my default policy. I have 3 policies assigned to it. Specifically my default approval policy, and then I throw in there my ignore drivers, my ignore language packs. And then you can see my deny groups. Well, I have 1 policy, and that's specifically designed to deny IE 8 or 9 and deny IE 10, 11, and any other things. I kind of lump my approvals and my denies all on the top so they're easy to see and kind of lump them all together, because as we know, with my approvals, the only thing that matters is the classification of that patch. So again, the hierarchy of our patches is not set, ignore, install, remove, deny. It all depends on that classification. It doesn't matter how many groups it's approved on, doesn't matter how many groups it's ignored or denied, it's always going to go by that classification. So if I have an agent that's in this group, my default, and it's setting a patch to install or approved it, the patch is approved in this group, but it's in another group that has it denied, deny is always going to win. So that's why I keep all of my approvals and deny groups up at the top so I can easily manage, hey, where are these agents in these groups? What policies do I have assigned so I can easily see what's getting applied. Down here, I call my patch install groups because these that actually have my update policy and reboot policies applied, because this is the one that actually is determined by the order in which it's in this list. All the ones at the bottom is going to have the highest priority. I can use these arrows to move them up and down, but as you can see, my workstations are up at the top, and then my servers, my VM host is down at the bottom. So as I'm applying my update and reboot policies, as I go down this list, the higher the priority. So as you can see, I have my servers installing during this time, but you know what? If it's a server and a VM host, which it always is going to be, the VM host is going to reign supreme, so I'm going to assign this policy to it. So it's kind of like our old system where we put them in a group and then we assigned a template. And how did we handle conflicts with our old group structure? Well, it's the priority level of that template. We had 0 through 10, and you had to kind of go through, and I'm like, well, which policy is getting applied? Well, I have to go to that group, and I have to see that template, and I'm like, what's the priority of that one? Then I have to open up that group and see what that is to kind of see who's winning that battle. Here in this system, it's all right there in front of me. All I have to know is like, oh, well, this one's on the bottom, so that one's going to trump anyone above it, so I can see exactly how these policies are getting assigned. Real easy. Once I get this kind of configured, it's real easy to track. So really cool configuration here. It's just kind of getting your mind wrapped around how we have this set up and an easy way to kind of manage it, which is why I kind of set it up this way.
Now, these groups you have on the screen, these are ones that you created out of the box for your, in our demo environment for patch management, straight out of the box for LabTech 11. You created them all.
It's kind of a combination is when you go through the wizard, you have the ability to bring in your own patching groups. We're going to have a couple in there by default. This is my kind of combination of some that I brought over, but we're going to kind of throw in some groups by default. All these patch install groups are going to come with you because remember, we don't bring your schedules in when you go through the wizard. You have to bring those or create those schedules on your own. So we'll bring the patch install groups in. Those are our kind of default schedules. Now we're not going to apply anything to them. They're not going to have a policy assigned to them. They're all going to be not set. In my system, they're all set up because my system is active. But it's going to be a combination of anything you create and anything that you imported when you went through the wizard.
Okay.
So that's a perfect segue to, okay, now I kind of have this list, but I want to kind of fine tune it, customize it. What are my different options here? So if I come up here and I click on this thing right here, let me blow that up for you. This is where I can bring in an existing group. I can create a new group. I can remove a group or I can edit the group that's in here. So what this allows me to do is to customize my system. So if I want to add an existing group, what that's going to do is it's just going to bring me up this screen and it's going to say, hey, here's all the groups, which one you want to bring over. So if there's a specific client that I want to assign its own policies to, I have the ability to just bring that in, migrate that into or import that into my system, and I can work from that. It'll be in this list and I can do whatever I want with it. So really cool. Now by default, you can also do this in the navigation tree. All of these groups have the group type of patching. That's what signifies that, hey, by default, I'm going to put them in here. But a lot of your clients, any of your service plans or any of those other groups are going to be different classifications. So you actually have to import those and bring them in separately. Or if you create a group and you make it a patching type group, it'll automatically populate this list. So that's an easy way I can import groups in there. I can also create new groups and kind of stay within here, and I don't have to kind of go out and mess with any of those. I can click on create new group and I have the ability to create a manual group, which is just going to give me all the computers that I have here, and I can bring them over and I can manually assign those if I want to. Not really recommended practice because this is lab tech and we don't like to do anything manually. I also have the ability to create an auto join and allow me to search through all the searches that I have in this system, and I can populate this group with that search. So if I have an existing search and I just want to apply that to a group within here, I have the ability to do that. Or what I can do is I can click this and it's a new auto join search. It's going to pop me up a screen. I can create my own search right in here. I don't have to jump out. Again, keep throwing this out there is once I'm in here, I don't have to do a lot of jumping in and out of this system. I can stay in here. I can import groups. I can create a manual group. I can create an auto join group. I can create a search to attach to it all within here. So really cool functionality that we've designed here. One thing I will point out when I create a new group within this system, the one thing that it doesn't do is it doesn't make it that grayed out master group. So the one thing we do recommend is if you create it in here is go back to the navigation tree, open it up and check that master group checkbox twice. Make it that grayed out master so it plays nice with all my other groups. That is the one thing that we're trying to kind of get push along is like when you create a group in here, automatically make it a master group. So we're trying to fight for that. That's the one thing that's the downside to this is it doesn't do that by default at this point. But as you can see, I can stay within here. I can put my groups in the logical order. I can apply my policies. I can bring in an existing group. I can create my own. The world is open to do whatever I want to customize this system.
One-stop shop.
Pretty cool stuff.
One other thing about those groups, one of the things that was available when you clicked on the little icon at the top when you can create a group, add an existing, one of the options there is remove a group. Just a little caution. That literally removes the group from LabTech. So be careful.
Yeah, the one thing is you'll see here is if I'm opening up or I'm editing a patching type group, it's going to say remove group, and it's going to actually delete it from the navigation tree. If you bring in or you import a group and I click on that, it's going to say remove or unlink that group. And what that does is it just takes it out of the patch manager and doesn't allow you to see it. So big difference between remove and unlink that group is one removes it, the remove does that, unlink it just takes it out of this. So you import one, you won't have the ability to remove it and kind of accidentally delete it. It will actually unlink it and just keep it from showing up in here. So thanks for bringing that up, Scott. All right, so we got our groups down, and we talked about last week, we talked about all of our policies. And with our approval policies, we kind of touched a little bit on the stage deployment. And I just want to kind of reinforce how that ties in. And so now here in my configuration, I'm at my approval policies. I just want to talk a little bit about how that works. So if I blow up this section, and it shows, hey, this is my approvals default group. Now I know this is my default group because it's got this asterisk. Where's my mouse? There it is. It has this asterisk. That's designated as my default approval group. How does it get that asterisk? This checkbox right here requires routine approval. That does two things. So when I mark a group as my default, what it's going to do is, first thing, it's going to make sure that it requires routine approval, which is what populates that little red circle in my main screen that says, hey, this is my default, and what it's going to signify is I have patches that are currently set or not set in this group. So when we mark that as my default, hey, we're going to let you know that we want all the patches in this group to have a classification. So if I see that little red dot, that means that my default setting or my default group does not have or has a list of patches that are not set. I need to make a decision on them. So that's one. The second thing it does, when I check that box, it opens up this stage delay times. This doesn't exist on any of these others. It only shows up when you check this box, it opens this up. That allows me to set up stage deployment. Now, stage deployment gives me the ability to automate the process of automatically approving and moving patches from stage to stage. Little background, back in the day when we used to have this, well, in the old patch manager, you would apply patches and then you would wait and you would test them, and then when everything was good, you'd have to go back in, you'd have to manually copy those approvals back over to another group, your production group, whichever way you want to do it. What this does is just automates that process. When I turn this on, what it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, how long do you want these patches in your test stage before I transfer them to my pilot? So I have 3 stages. It's test, pilot, and production. So test is typically going to be computers that I have in-house that I have easy access to, something that lives here, a couple different devices that I can just kind of test on. So when I first test it, I want it local, and you know what, I'm going to throw the book at all of these agents. You know, maybe I approve everything, and I'm like, hey, let's see what happens. And it's maybe a combination of different applications that some of my key partners have. One thing I want to keep in mind is when I put it in this test duration, you can see in my example here that's set to 2 days. I want to make sure that I'm installing patches, or I have an update policy is actually installing patches during this time, because this time span is just for those 2 days. It's not 2 days after you patch. It's as soon as I change that patch classification, the clock starts, and from 2 days from that point, we're going to copy those patches over. So I have to make sure that in my test stage, hey, maybe if it's only 2 days, I want to make sure that I'm patching every day, so I'm patching both of those days. Now I can do it as as easy as 1 day, or as simple as 1 day, or I can go up to 3 weeks to keep them in that window. But I got to have them in that window long enough to where they're actually applying update policies, where they're actually trying to install patches. And what this does is, hey, you know what? In 2 days, I'm going to copy all the approvals and I'm going to move them over to my pilot. All right, so I have 2 days to test. If I find a problem within those patches, all I have to do is hit ignore on that patch, and the ignores and denies automatically apply to both my pilot and my production group. So we're only talking about approvals. It only copies approvals. As soon as I ignore a patch, as soon as I deny a patch, it applies it to all those devices, no matter what stage they're in. So really cool concept here is I can go through my test phase, and you know what, I install patches. Oh, I found a couple, let's ignore them. Okay, it copies over the approvals to my pilot. Again, this is going to be my pilot production. This is going to be, maybe I have a smaller client with not a lot of devices, something outside of my building that I don't have complete control on. Hey, let's see in a kind of smaller real world environment what's going to happen out there. So again, same rules apply. When I put them in my pilot deployment stage, I want to make sure that I'm installing patches during the stage, whatever my time frame is. Again, could be up to 3 weeks. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We test them, we install them. Anything that's good, it's automatically going to get copied over to my production. Anything that I find a problem here, I set it to ignore, I set it to a deny, it applies it across the board. Then it goes to my production. Production is going to be everything else that I have on my list. That's my production stage. We're ready to rock and roll. Hey, I've gone through 2 stages of deployment. I've tested all the patches. Here's my problem ones. I'd ignored this many at this stage. I ignored them this many at this stage. Boom. I go into production, and then they're released to the wild. So this is just that automated approval copy that allows you to kind of do that. You find a problem, you ignore it, you deny the patch, it automatically applies to those agents. Now again, I still have to apply this default to an actual group. Back in my group section of my configuration, for me it's my default approval. If I'm going to put it on all my agents and all of these are going to be in one stage or another, I have the ability to do that. And I track this from my dashboard. We have that deployment section, and here I can see the overall status of my deployment. It's going to show me my test stage. Hey, in here I've installed 7 out of 37, overall 16%. I don't have any failed. I kind of can see the status as it goes through these different stages: test stage, pilot, production. You can see how everything's kind of filtering through. So an easy way, a great way to track these patches and test them before I release them to the wild.
You know, prior to this feature with LabTech 11 Patch Management, testing patches was a bit of a bear. We would have partners ask us in prior versions of Patch Management, hey, how do I test machines? Well, really what you got to do is you got to set up a test bed, you got to pick the patches you want to get deployed to that test bed, make sure everything works fine, and then you got to copy them over. And they were like, wow, that seems pretty labor intensive. We're like, yeah, it kind of is, sorry. So when we came out with this stage deployment, it's just a perfect solution to allow me to be able to put things into my test stage. This is going to be boxes in your office. It's going to be virtual machines. It's going to be machines you don't care about at all. Let me test them. Let me go back and check on them. You know, in the example from the screenshot, we had 2 days set. Maybe you're going to set something longer because, like Tall Guy was talking about, you're going to need to make sure that they're getting installed during that window. Whatever your window is, you set yourself some sort of reminder to go back and check on them. Okay, I didn't get any blue screens, or this one needs to be ignored. And it's just a way that we finally have built in patch testing into the environment for you. All you do is go to your devices, mark a few of them into the test stage, mark a few of them into the pilot stage, and you've got built-in testing right out of the box. It's something that we've needed for a long time, and it's great to have it in there now.
And by default, all of your devices are going to be in the production stage, so they're all going to live there. You don't have to use stage deployment. You have to turn it on, and then you have to set it. So it doesn't come, loaded out of the box. You have to set it all up. It doesn't come just like, oh, all of these are going to be in here automatically. You have to assign that default. And even if you sign your default approval policy, you still have to enable stage deployment. So you can still have the group that kind of checks to make sure you have patches assigned or classified, and not use stage deployment. So a bunch of different things that we can kind of use. And like I said, all of your devices are going to be in that production environment, and we're getting ready to break down devices because at my devices I have the ability to assign different agents in my test and in my pilot, and we're going to go over that right now. Because now that I kind of working back and we kind of started with configuration, we kind of looked at and we assigned our default approval policy, and we have stage deployment. Now I have the ability to kind of track and see how everything's going at the devices screen. Again, can't harp on this enough, is I go to my devices screen, again, that's up here on this side. It's going to give me a list of all my devices. Again, I don't have to go jump out into my navigation tree, find the device, double click on it, open the computer management screen, go to the patching tile to kind of look up this information. I have everything right here within the patch manager. It's going to show me all my devices. Here they are. I highlight one up at the top. It's going to show me my patch information down at the bottom. This is kind of what we talked about in the navigation. What I want to kind of break down is all the information that I have available to me in patch information that allows me to kind of troubleshoot. So I'm going to go ahead and select my LabTech server. So I selected my LabTech server up at the top, and here all the information that I have down at the bottom. Now before I break down these sections, I want to show you down here, it's going to show me my operating system. It's going to show me my current WUA version of the Windows Update Agent on this device. So if it's getting flagged on the main dashboard that my WUA agent is out of date, I can come in here, I can open my device and say, well, what version am I on? We track that, we can kind of show you right here. And right here, my patching stage, here you can see this is in my production stage. If I click on this, this is where it's going to pop up and say, hey, do you want to be in test pilot or production? Again, all of them are going to be in production. You're just assigning the few devices that you have in your system to be in my test bed or be in my pilot bed. Again, your test one is only going to be usually a few machines in-house. Your pilot's going to be maybe a client, something outside your building that's relatively close or doesn't have a lot of devices. Again, I can come in here to the device and I can just pick and choose which ones that I want to do that. Now, unfortunately, at this stage of the game, we don't have a way to automate that. If you want to like run a script, we don't have that option available. It's like, hey, I want this client all in the pilot. You can't go to the client and kind of mass select that. This is not an extra data field like all of our extra data fields. This is in a separate table. That being said, it is a table in the database. It is just a value of 0, 1, or 2. You can, if you're a scripting guru, you can go in there and you can figure out how to create a script. We just don't have one of those by default to mass select a bunch of devices and put them in a specific stage. That would have to be done on your own. You would need to just come to the device and then click on there to assign it. And also, it's going to show me my inventory, and I can also resend the inventory from this device. So that's just informational stuff that I have here. Moving up to the top, when I default, it's going to show me my patches. This is my patch inventory for this device. It's going to give me the same thing if I open up the device and I go to the patching tile. That's going to be all my devices. From here, I can look for a specific patch. I can try to install it. I can try to remove it. Or if it's failed, I can clear that failed status. Again, with this new system, for all my old school people, we no longer have a pushed status. I know that was a lot of people are very happy about that push status because it was kind of a pain. Right now we have installed, we have not attempted, and we have failed. Those are the only 3 statuses that you have. So what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to install it once. If it doesn't install properly the first time, we're going to store that hotfix or that patch in the registry of that device. So the next time we install, we're going to try those again. We're going to try those first before we do anything else. If it fails that second time, that's what marks it as failed. So if it has an error code and you try to figure out what's going on, and then after it failed, you can come in here, highlight the patch and say, okay, clear failed, put it back to not attempted so we can put it back into circulation so we can try to install it again. But I can do that all from here. Again, I'm on my device's screen. I highlight my device. Here's all the patches, and I can just manually install them right from here if I need to. Looking for a specific patch on a device, boom, I can go to the device, find it, install it. I can also track all my patch jobs on this screen. I go to patch jobs, boom, here's all my patch jobs. It can see download and installed successfully, have all the information. One cool thing about here is if I do have a failure and we do parse Microsoft error code, now you'll see this status as failed. We'll actually give you a link to that error code. It's just going to Google that error code for you, and it's going to pop up in a browser to allow you to troubleshoot. So we did put some new features in here, allow you to troubleshoot. We found an error code. Hey, we're going to give you that error code. We're going to make it clickable and allow you to Google it to see if you can figure out what's going on. But again, this patch job is the same. It was on the old patching tab, and now the patching tile in LabTech 11. It just allows me to track the jobs and see if they were successful. Next is my Windows Update log. Again, this is just going to be a parsed view of the Windows Update log. I can kind of comb through this to see if I can find any specific error codes and see what's going on with this device as well. Lastly, really cool for troubleshooting aspects is I've assigned this agent. It's in a group in my configurations. We just walked through my groups. I have all of these assigned. Well, now how do I troubleshoot? Okay, I've assigned this policy to this group, but you know what? I need to figure out what this is getting applied to, or hey, why is this device not patching like I should? Well, again, I come to my devices. I have this group section. It's going to show me all the patching groups that this agent is in. And it's really cool because it allows me to kind of see all of the things that are here. And also, it's going to show me, again, just like my group structure, the one at the bottom is going to win. So if it's got a bunch of policies assigned, well, I'm going to go to the one at the bottom because that's going to take the greatest priority, and it's going to say, hey, what policy is assigned? Well, here's my extend server install and my suppress reboot. I highlight that group. It's going to give me all the group details here. Auto join, here's the name of it. Update mode is managed. I'm not creating a Windows restore point because this is a server. My reboot policy is suppress reboot. All of the actual aspects of this policy I can show here. It's going to show me kind of a broken down effective policy that I can scroll through. It's going to show me the policies assigned. Again, all this information is here. If this isn't patching like I expect it to, I can come to the device and boom, I can see what's going on here. Another cool thing that's like, okay, this is in my patch install servers group. But you know what? Every once in a while, I have that one server that I don't want to kind of make it go with or play with all the other groups or agents in this group. So what I also have the ability to do at this level is have a local override. Again, if it's in a group, but I want this agent specifically to behave a little bit differently, I can use a local override and I can set specific policy just for this device. And again, it's going to be at the bottom, so I know if it's at the bottom of the list, that's what's going to take priority. So here, patch install servers, it's installing this time. You know what? I want to apply a different update policy just to this device. I can click not set. I can change that policy. I can still keep the reboot policy, or I can change it. So I do have the ability to override any of the other group policies here locally, again, on my devices section, in my group section, boom, ready to rock and roll. I can control everything right in here, not jumping around, not going to the device. Yeah. Everything is right here in front of me. Very cool. In the patch manager. So again, a lot of cool stuff here. So last section I want to talk about, still, we're moving backwards. We're creating our groups. Okay, I have stage deployment. Okay, we're working back. All right, I'm troubleshooting individual devices. I'm setting up local overrides. I'm seeing what groups they're in. I'm checking the patch jobs. I'm putting in my test group. So now I have one last scenario for you. So I have a patch that I need to install right now. I don't want to wait till their next window. Maybe I only patch once a month and I don't want to wait that long. I found a patch that I just want to get out there. I want to find it and I want to deploy it right now. So I have the ability to do that. Here, I'm back in my patches view. Again, my patches view is all the patches that I have in my system. So another cool thing we put in here is the ability to search directly in here, and it's the same search format that we've kind of introduced a couple versions ago. Well, in here, my patches, let's say I'm looking to install, I picked this, Skype. I just need Skype installed, and you know what? It's not installed, and I just need to do it because we just changed the policy, and all these specific agents, I need to have it installed. So what I can do is I can come up here, and I can click on the title. When I do that, it's going to pop up my filter editor. And from here, I got a lot of different options. Here you can see I can title begins with, and then I can enter a value. Well, begins with, I can say equals, I can say does not equal, I say is less than, I can go contains in this if I'm working with a keyword search. Ends with, is like, is not like, is only of. I have all my operators that I want to choose from and all my SQLing, I can do that. From here, I'm going to click contains, and then title contains Skype. And then when I hit apply, it's going to filter out, hey, here are the patches that meet those keywords, Skype and Skype for Windows Desktop. And it's going to show me those patches. When I highlight that patch, down here by device deployment, it's going to show me all the devices that are associated with that patch. So if these show that, hey, this isn't installed, I can see that real quick. Because here my patch state is not attempted. Well, why didn't it install? Oh, because these are all ignored. That's why they're not getting installed, because I made a policy before to ignore all Skype patches. And you can also see here contains title Skype, so it shows me how this is filtering. So I'm like, well, I know I set that policy, but for these specific devices, I need to install them. So what I can do is I can simply highlight all of these devices, and I can come over here and install patch on device. That one right there. And it's going to issue this patch straight to these machines. Now, two things about this. The first thing is it's going to ignore any policy that's assigned. So even though it says ignore, I'm pushing this command out manually. This is going right now. It's not waiting for my update policy to apply. That's the only one that actually cares about the approval policy. Because if I have it to ignore and I have an update policy to install every day, well, we're going to look through, I'm like, oh, this is set to ignore, forget about it. When I issue that command manually, it doesn't matter. It's like, hey, put these patches out right now. Doesn't matter about the approval policy. I found a patch that I need to install. I need to override that. Boom, I find the patch, I search for it, I highlight all the devices I want to install it, and I click that, and boom, it just issues that command and attempts to install that patch on all these devices. Easy peasy. We have the ability right here, quick, easy approach, search for it, find it, deploy it. Flip side, if I find one that, hey, I don't want this patch, we also have the ability, this icon right here is to remove it. Hey, let's attempt to remove a patch that I shouldn't have. Again, same process. I find it, I highlight it, I pick the machines that it's associated to, and then I can issue different commands to install it, to try and remove it, wake that device up, all of the different things that we kind of already talked about. So this, we're kind of coming back, we're applying real world scenarios. Hey, I need to get this patch installed now, I can't wait for the window. All right, cool, find it, deploy it, boom, ready to rock and roll.
Nothing to it.
Just like that. And really, that's the main things that we want to talk about today. Not a lot, but very important. We navigated, we configured. Now let's go back and let's fine tune some things. Let's kind of dive a little bit deeper of some cool things that we can work with within this new patch manager.
One of the things that came up about, one of the questions that came in from people who watched this before was, how do you use local override on a certain patch, or is it on a device?
It's on a device, actually. So local override, what that allows me to do, we kind of touched on it in the webinar, but what we're going to use the local override for is if I go into my configuration screen, and one thing that we kept talking about is our group assignment, how we're going to apply these policies at the group level. And so here I'm in my groups, I can see the policies that are being assigned, whether they're my update policy or my reboot policy, or over here I have my approval policies. So what we're doing here is we're applying them at the group level. So this is my entire list of domain controllers and MySQL servers. If I go up, I have all my workstations. They're all getting this assigned policy. Well, there could be a situation where, you know what, all my DCs, or I have one particular server that I don't want to lump in with the rest of them. But I don't really want to create an individual group and create a search and kind of populate it and put it in here and mess with the priority. I just want to be able to take that one workstation or server and take it out of that group and do my own thing. That's what the local override does. It allows me to kind of take a look at this group and say, hey, I don't want all my workstations to use this extended patch install window from 1 to 7. I want this to have its own a policy assigned to it. So that's when I'm going to go to my devices screen. I'm going to find the device that I want to kind of override. And in this example, I'll use my LabTech server because, you know what, I want to use my LabTech server for something unique. And here in my patch information, I go down to groups. Now this is going to be the opposite of what I saw in my group section, where here's all my groups and it shows me priority. Now I'm looking at the device and here's all the groups that that device is a member of. So the same policy that it's getting applied to is the same thing that I'm looking at here. As I go down this list, that's going to be a list of the priority in which these policies are getting assigned. So here, my patch install servers that this server, my LabTech server is a member of, it's going to get assigned this policy because it's at the bottom of that list. And if I highlight it, you can see I have the policy. It's got my group details. It's going to show my effective policy, what actually shows what policies are currently assigned to this device. So I can kind of troubleshoot and see what's going on. But now I get to the situation where, you know what, I don't want it to act like all my other servers. I want this to do its own thing outside of the group applied policy. So here at the very bottom, I have my local override. So we're still using the same format or the same methodology that if it's at the bottom of that list, hey, that's going to override everything else. So if I come down to my LabTech server local override and I click not set, here I'm just going to get another list of all my update policies that I can assign at this level. Instead of my extended server 1 to 7, you know what, I'm just going to do my LabTech server from Sunday from 3 to 5. And then that's going to change my overall policy. So here you see, as I scroll through, even though it still has this, it's now getting trumped by my Sunday and still pulling everything else from that. You can see that my effective policy for this device has changed. My update policy is Sunday from 3 to 5, but it's still pulling my reboot policy from there because I'm not pulling anything that's trumping that. So this just gives me the ability to kind of tweak or mix and match what I want to do. Hey, you know what? I want my reboot policy at the group, but you know what? I want my update policy locally at the agent, or vice versa. Maybe this server was rebooting and, you know, for this one I want to suppress the reboot. So I can kind of use the same functionality, kind of just tweak individual agents. You know what, I don't want to get in the habit of creating all these subgroups just to do one or tweak one or two things when I only have a handful of agents that I want to kind of outside of that box. So I can go straight to the device, go to that local override, and I can apply just local policies to these devices. And that's really what this kind of talks about, and what the question was about is just how would I use local overrides, and, you know, just kind of the overall structure of where I do that and some examples of what we're talking about. And that's right there is just one example of, hey, you know what, my LabTech server, I want it outside of my patching servers. I want it to do its own thing. I can either change its update policy, its reboot policy. I can also apply approval policy as well if I want to apply, you know, a specific deny to just this agent. You know, it's pulling in my default policy, but you know what, just for this device, I want to deny IE11. So boom, I can apply that approval policy where it's going to deny that. It's not going to deny it over all my servers, it's just going to deny it for this local agent. So again, I can apply individual policies at the device level.
I think what some partners that we've had conversations with about, and even on our team as we've been kind of absorbing this new patch manager for LabTech 11, I think what could be confusing and what some people don't quite get immediately is that override is any policies. It's not just I want to override whether or not I'm installing a patch. It's not just I want to override that this one's not going to get rebooted at the same time. It's any of the policies that are being applied. You have that granular flexibility for those local overrides.
Yep, so very cool functionality. And again, one thing I always like to point out is as we've kind of come full circle when we kind of in part 3 or 12, in this webinar is, you know what, all the things that we're focusing on here is I'm not jumping outside of the patch manager. I can just go to my devices tab. I can troubleshoot the devices here. I can kind of stay here and kind of manage everything where I don't have to jump to the computer management screen, go to any patching tab, go to anything else to kind of manage it. I'm all within the structure of the new patch manager, which I like.
Very convenient.
Very convenient.
So another question that came in is where a partner had indicated that they remembered the part where you could have, I think it was the one policy where you're setting that as sort of the default policy. It's the one where you fill the checkbox out and that is controlling the deployment stages.
Yes, yes.
So they
gotcha.
they remembered that part, and that, okay, there's only one policy that controls the staged deployment, but their question was tied to, well, now how do I get my machine into a specific stage of the deployment?
Gotcha. So what we have here is, if I go to my approval policies, we kind of talked about how to set up stage deployment. So I'm going to mark it as my default approval policy. It's got the little asterisk by it. So what that designates is, you know what, I'm going to make that my default group. And again, we can only have one default approval policy. So if I click on this, you're going to see, hey, I don't have stage deployment. I don't have any of that information. If I go back to my default, I'm going to have this requires routine approval, which does two things. One is it gives me the ability to kind of mark any agents that I currently have, if I don't have any patches, or if I have any patches that are not set, which will signify by this red dot here. So if I set my default approval policy as this and I see that red dot, that means I have some patches on here that are not set. But the other thing that does is it allows me the ability to give me my stage delay times. We can only set one machine or one policy to do that, and that also opens up my stage delay times. So here I enable this, and then I set my test duration, my pilot duration, and I have that all configured and ready to go. I set up my automatic approvals, ignores anything that I want. So now that this part is done, so now is the next step. Okay, I have my stage deployment set up. Now what do I do? How do I get the agents, to kind of go through these different stage deployments? Well, out of the box, every one of your agents is going to be in that production stage. So you don't have to use stage deployment at all, even if you want that marker to kind of tell you, hey, I want to know when I have patches that are not set in my default approval policy. I can still use that without using stage deployment. But if I want to use stage deployment, well, just remember that everything starts off in my production stage. And then I have to mark the devices that I want in my test stage or in my pilot stage. And that's going to be, again, done on my device screen. So if I load a device, and again, I load my patch information, you're going to see patching stage here, and you're going to see it's got production underlined here, which means it's clickable, and this is where I actually set what stage I want this device to be in. So if I want to move my LabTech server to my test or my pilot, I can do that from here. So we set up stage deployment, we pick the policy that's going to auto-approve all these things, and we manually approve, and then we're notified that, hey, I have patches that are not set. Okay, we've managed the policy part of it. We managed the classification of the patches. Well, now all we have to do is signify which devices we want to be in what stage of deployment. And we do that again at the device screen. I load my device, boom, I come in here and I set each one of the devices and what stage I want it to be in. So as I go through here and I pick different ones here, this one's in test. If I want to move that to pilot or production, again, by default, they're all going to be production, which is that's going to be a majority of your ones that you want. And I just need to pick, hey, where are a few handful of devices I want to test with? Again, what we recommend is those are some default machines I have in a lab or I have in my building that I can kind of throw some patches at and see if anything breaks. And then I have my pilot stage. That's usually outside of my building. Maybe I have a smaller client that I can kind of use as my next phase. And then once it goes through 2 stages, then I release it to the wild, and that's my production stage. And that's going to be 90, 95% of my agents, depending on the size of your business. But again, we set everything up over here. We come back to the devices, and we actually put them in the stage we want them to be in.
Mm-hmm. Easy peasy. Okay, another thing that we had talked about is if you are, I think you could go to like devices, and from the devices global, you can click on a device and then you can, and I think another way you actually went to this was from the patches global list when you were filtering and let's say you
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to find a bunch of machines that had a certain patch.
Gotcha. So here, one thing that we always talked about, or back when I was in support, is everything's fine when I set up a policy and I set up this auto approve. Hey, whenever this patch shows up, automatically approve it. Or, when this shows up, automatically ignore it. And I'm like, okay, I can handle that. Every once in a while, well, one thing with that is I can approve it, but I still have to wait for my Microsoft update policy and that actual install time to actually deploy it. So let's say I have a scenario where, you know what, a 0-day patch release was kind of let go by Microsoft. And if you're not familiar with 0-day patches, Microsoft usually, now this is going away, but usually they release patches on the second Tuesday. So, hey, here's all the new patches for the month. Well, every once in a while they'll have a 0-day where it's like, you know what, we can't wait till that next month. We need to release a patch right now because it's critical. We found a vulnerability. Hey, we need to get that deployed. So if you're patching once a month or once every couple months, well, there may be an instance where, you know what, I need to find that patch. I need to find which devices are associated to it, and I need to install it right now. So that's what this scenario kind of plays to is if I come into my patches, again, this is all 1,252 of my patches. And let's say I want to find that patch. Well, if I have the KB number or if I have the title or anything that I need as a keyword, I can kind of go to title, use my filter editor, and I can kind of find it. So in this example, I'm just going to use one that I know all my devices have, is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose Skype. And it'll be like, oh, here's Skype, and then it's going to populate, oh, here's all the devices that have Skype. And I use that example because I know all my devices are going to have that. Now I have the ability to, you know what, for all of my workstations, you know what, I need to deploy this right now. So I can highlight those, and I can just do the install patch on devices, and boom, I send that patch out. And I can kind of pick and choose, you know what, I just want this on my Windows 10 machines. Or you know what, I just want it on these two machines. I can use a shift click and I can use the Control Plus item to kind of mix and match what patches I want. But this is going to be my list of devices corresponding to that specific patch. So if I have a 0-day or if I have a patch that I need to get out there, I can go ahead, I can find that patch, I can filter it up here. It's got my devices, I can pick and choose which ones I need to install that on. Now the kicker about this is you can see that I can select, whichever devices I want here. And a lot of questions we have is like, well, the policy approval said to ignore. So if I try to install it, well, it's going to read that that's set to ignore, so it's not going to do it. That's not how this works. This policy approval is currently what's assigned to it. That only goes with the automated process. So if I select these and I click, you know what, install patch on devices, I'm sending that command straight to the agent right now. It has no bearing and it doesn't matter what that approval policy is because I'm overriding it with a manual command. That is the same thing that used to be the case in the old patch manager. It's the same case with LiveTech 11. That functionality hasn't changed. I can manually install a patch right now and completely forego any of the current policy settings. Because you know what, even though this is set to ignore, turns out that I really need Skype real quick, and you know what, I don't want to go back through and kind of rechange all of my policies. I can just come in here and boom, I can just install it and get it ready to go. I can get it out the door, and as soon as these agents check in, it's going to execute that command. And also, it's on the flip side. Well, let's say, you know what, I accidentally installed Skype and it shouldn't be on there. Well, let me find all the ones that do have it installed, and here I can do the uninstall patch from device as well. So this screen is mainly used for that purpose, or mainly what I kind of telling people or talking to people about is this is going to be a list of all the patches that I have. I could clear my filter out. Here's going to be everything. If I want to find a specific patch, I'm going to use my filter editor. I'm going to have a lot of different things I can search by. I typically use title because it's going to give me the ability to look up a keyword. It's going to give me the ability to look up the KB number, which is very critical for a lot of partners out there. Hey, I need to find KB, so-and-so. So I can come in here, put in just contains and enter the KB number, and then I'm going to have it. Or maybe I only have the first three numbers of it and I can't remember the rest. I can put that in there, it's going to find it, and I can filter through here, and then it's going to give me all of the agents that are associated to that patch. So this gives me the ability to either, wake the device, install it, uninstall it, clear the fail, or if I need to reboot the device, I can do all that from here. So that's really what this is. It gives me the ability kind of find everything, and I can kind of execute actions from this screen. And that's really what this is here for. as a lot of that time we had the when Microsoft releases that 0-day patch, you know what? I need to find where these are coming from and what they're associated to, because I need to get that patch installed real quick like.
Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't get any other questions yet.
Oh, that's it?
We did not receive any other questions prior to today's session, except for the one that you, who is about the 5th or 6th person down on the list of attendees, is typing right now.
I'm typing
So
right now.
go
I
ahead
can
and get
feel
that,
it. I can
get
feel
that
the
question in
typing.
there.
I can hear
Finish
it.
the typing.
The faint click, click, click
Don't worry
of
about
the keyboard.
I heard it too. Oh, wait a minute. Uh-huh.
We did hear some clicking.
Yes, apparently.
So a couple things while we're waiting on you to finish the question. I don't want to forget to mention that one is we do have a blueprint for the new Patch Manager. Once we get this session recorded, again we have the first webinar of the part 1 of this webinar series, and then this is part 2. We're currently doing part 3. As soon as we get this recorded and switched over, I'm going to add this to the blueprint. But this blueprint is also a smaller section of our new partner kit that we have available. And if you don't know where our partner kits are, if you navigate to labtechsoftware.com, go to education, come down to partner kit, all of the information for Patch Manager LabTech 11 is currently displayed here. So you're going to have a link to that blueprint I just showed you. You're going to have a link to all of our documentation, patch management overview. You're going to have a link to all the webinars. Currently, we have the 2. We'll load this 3rd one once we're done. And you're also going to have a link to all of our how-to videos. So how to navigate the new Patch Manager, how to navigate all of the different screens, how to create a reboot policy, how to configure patch staging, how to change computers' patch stage, how to manually approve patches. All of these short 2 to 5 minute videos that we have on a specific topic, they're all within this partner kit. And again, going into labtechsoftware.com, logging into the partner portal, education, partner kits, that's where you'll find this new partner kit that we launched. We have overview, blueprint, documentation, any KB articles. It's all right here. So all the information you're looking for, any questions you have, they're going to be in the partner kit. We have the blueprint that'll also point you in the direction, break down each screen for you. If I want more information on Microsoft update policies, boom, here's a how-to video. Here's a link to that specific source in the documentation and kind of get you ready to rock and roll. So all of the tools are at your disposal. All of this is published for your use. This is part 3, of our series. So I want to make sure you know of all the stuff that we have available for you from the education team.
Okay.
Do we have some
So
questions?
we do. First of all, a quick and easy, simple link to get to these would be connectwise.com/blueprints if you need access to that. And one partner had asked about the Patch Manager and kind of chimed in on their experience. So this partner is saying that their Patch Manager is still pretty slow and that they had attended a Q&A webinar and that their issues may be related to Pilot, and they wanted to know if we have an update on that. During the Q&A webinar, our coworker actually, Barnesy, he mentioned that there's going to be an update soon and another by the end of the month. I want to know if we have any additional details. So we have a nifty little canned statement that I just kind of want to update you guys on. Anybody who is in our pilot program or already on 11 should have probably received some of this communication, but this is coming from our product management department, and it's addressing issues that have been experienced related to Patch Manager, specifically slowness and performance issues within the new LabTech 11 Patch Manager. So we kind of have a little bit of an update. I can't give you hard dates on it because they are frequently in flux as any particular patch goes through a build and QA and pilot, and if there's any repercussions out of the pilot program. So those dates are always fluid, but they are, the patches are currently lined up. So the part we have specific to the LabTech 11 Patch Manager. LabTech 11 Patch 3 has a lot of updates for Patch Manager, including trending performance items. We will continue this cadence for Patch 4 mid-September, and Patch 5, end of September. It is our goal to address Patch Manager reported issues in these patches. As we move through the month of September, we will continue to address the performance and support needs around the Patch Manager. It is best to wait until LabTech 11 Patch 5 has been released to further investigate if the new Patch Manager is suitable for your environment. Thank you. So this has been the sole focus of our LabTech 11 push. We got LabTech 11 out the door. We've had some adoption. We've had partners in pilot, and I know that there has been a significant impact to our support for people who have experienced issues, and a vast majority of those issues are related to the patch management and the performance therein. So everything we're focused on right now in our patch management cycles, in our product management cycles and updates to the various patches coming out for LabTech 11 is primarily focused on improvements of the performance of the patch manager. So like our one attendee here said, that we were in our patch manager product management webinar earlier this week, we were saying there's going to be one out later this week and then one at the end of this month. And like I just read in our lovely canned statement, we've got a couple of patches coming out targeting performance in 11 to improve the usability of Patch Manager.
So yeah, sole focus optimization is really kind of improving the look and feel, and more of the back end, just the speed of the Patch Manager. So that is, like Scott said, like our product management team, yeah, we're really looking to kind of fine tune the back end to get this to really hum.
And I'm reading through the last couple questions here. Bear with me for a second. Yeah, there is a question in here from Clayton about details about a specific column in a specific table in the database. I'm afraid I don't have the answer to that right off the top of my head. I have not really familiarized myself with the different tables and columns in the back end that are working Patch Manager on the front end of LabTech 11. I'll see if I can find the answer to that, but don't have it right off the top of my head. Anything else? Okay, I see. My pleasure. I would love to find that for you if I can, Clayton. Anyone else? We got another minute or two to sneak in a last second question. Make sure I didn't miss anybody. Good, good. I think we're caught up. Folks, if you don't have any additional questions for us, we can wrap it here. We'll give you just another minute. Anything else you need to add?
I think I'm all spent. So, part one. If you haven't kind of seen any of the other webinars, part one was a breakdown of the navigation of the new Patch Manager, where we broke down the dashboard, the patches, devices, approvals, and configuration screen of where everything is. Part two was sticking with the configuration and kind of walking through the different how to create the new policies, the Microsoft Update policy, if you have a third-party update license, reboot policies, approval policies. That was part two. And then part three, we kind of kept it here and then kind of backtrack back through, hey, patch staging, and then kind of devices and kind of what we can do, some one-off situations, and just kind of digging a little bit deeper into each one of these topics. So if you haven't seen the other two parts of this webinar series, they're out there, they're posted, they're in the, if you get to our blueprint, they're going to be linked right here, or if you want to go to our video library, that's also going to be Education Video Library. You can find all of the patch information here. If I want how-to videos or my patch management webinars here, they're going to be right here, part one and part two. And again, we also have our partner kit that has pretty much everything linked together. Long story short is we've put pretty much links all over the place to get you all the information that you could possibly need for Patch Manager. If you just want videos, you can go to our video library. If you just want the blueprint, hey, that's there. If you want to, where everything is, please take advantage of our Patch Management Partner Kit, where we have an overview, blueprint, documentation, KB articles, all the webinars, all the how-to videos, all simply linked right from this page. So all of the materials you could possibly think of, and as we release more information when we post this. I'll get it linked to the blueprint. I'll get it in the video library. As we do more how-to videos, as we're waiting some of the optimization pieces, we're going to update some how-to videos. All this information is going to be updated, so continually kind of track where this information is. It's all going to get linked here. We're going to keep everything together for you all to kind of get to this information. We're not hiding this information. We want everybody to know where this is, putting all this information out there for you so you have a smoother transition to the new Patch Manager.
And no, we're not including that last one in there. That's addressed to somebody who knows who they are. We did get another question here. I'm sorry it had been asked earlier, but I overlooked it in the list from my good friend Steve. Steve's question was about those last few things you were talking about there with the blueprints and the partner kits.
Yep.
He's asking, does every contact in the My Company list have access to them blueprints and the partner kits?
It depends on if they have an account within the partner portal. So you have to be able to log in to have access to this. That is something I believe our onboarding team would be able to answer for you. So if you reach out to our onboarding team, they should be able to look up and see, hey, who's got an account. As far as I know, if you can log into this, then you should have access to all the materials. Now, if you don't have a login, obviously you can't do these because these are locked in to our site. So I would start with onboarding and see if they can point you in the right direction and maybe get a list of the people who do and do not have access for your company and to kind of give you somewhere to start.
And one other thing that we can throw into that bundle when we're talking about these resources on our university for this new Patch Manager, when we're talking about your blueprints and your partner kits, what we've got coming down the pike being worked on by Tall Guy is we've got these university lessons that pertain to the new Patch Manager. So you can just go through there and it's just like all the rest of our university content. You get to see all of our new Patch Manager content. There's quizzes and there's actual how-to, and you get to get a full-on walkthrough just to kind of reinforce this even more for you in our university.
Yep, and we're releasing more and more materials each and every week, so stay tuned.
Y'all take care now.
All right, thanks everybody.